I would like to call the Burien City Council to order on June 3rd, 2015. Note for the record that we had a special meeting to discuss real estate acquisition and potential litigation at 5:30, and a special meeting to conduct the Parks and Recreation Board interviews at 6 p.m. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Roll call, please.
Mayor Brian Bennett.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Lucy Krakopia. Here. Council members Jack Block Jr.
Here.
Rose Clark. Here. Bob Ecker.
Here.
Joe McGilton. Here. And Gerald F. Robinson.
Here. Can we move the agenda confirmation, please?
I move agenda confirmation.
Second.
Please register votes. Agenda is confirmed unanimously. Next up, we've got public comment. Do we have a list this evening? Okay, so individuals, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Representatives of groups to 5 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record. First up, we have Good Space Guy, followed by Shelley Park, followed by Dick West.
Guten Abend. Es macht mich freuen, wieder hier zu sein. Ich heiße Good Space Guy und ich wohne in Boulevard Park. Each of us in our lives, day by day, have opportunities for greatness. And we don't always recognize the opportunity, greatnesses that are near us. And the Burien City Council, with its leadership, also has opportunities for greatness. Now, as I go around, I notice homeless people who are unemployed. And some people say they're unemployable. And certainly at the minimum wage, they're unemployable. But if we abolish the minimum wage, some of them would become employable and would not be forced to go to welfare or forced to go to crime or some other less desired option. So I was thinking, if you believe me, that the minimum wage creates unemployment and destroys companies, if you believe that, one thing you could do would be to lobby the state legislature for the abolishment of the minimum wage. I don't think the state legislature is going to abolish the job-destroying minimum wage until people start to lobby them. Most people have not studied economics, and so they don't see how the minimum wage does the opposite of what people normally think it does. And so we start, for those who understand economics, to start with the lobbying. And if enough people start lobbying their fellow citizens and the state legislature, we might actually get rid of this cause of unemployment. Now the economy is like an automobile, a great machine, and there are some people who have wonderful personalities for leadership, but they have not yet studied economics. And if they were to, like me, become an amateur economist and study economics in their spare time, our society would be on so much better path upward. So it's important for those who understand economics, understand how the minimum wage destroys jobs. If you can explain that to your neighbors and family members, that would be helpful. And if the legislature were to hear from you, that would also be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Shelley Park.
Shelley Park, 3106 Southwest 169th Street. I just wanted to let you guys know that this coming Thursday is the first walk in a while. B-Town Beat with the music and art walk. It goes from 6 to 9 p.m. We have 21 venues this month, more next month, and more to be added in August. In July, the art walk will be on the second Thursday because of the 4th of July conflict. It's going to be every first Thursday, and let's see, the library is involved. There's going to be a kid craft out here in the lobby. We have 2 community art projects, one in front of Three Tree Wellness. Lori Newsom is going to have a canvas that everyone is welcome to participate in, and also Phoenix Tea is going to have paper on the side wall that doesn't have anything on it for people to participate in. There'll be live painting by Sam Sneak, who's a well-known urban artist who's also from here. And we're a solid group of community members. There are 14 of us. We represent business owners, musicians, artists, and community activists. And we all believe that it is good to bring art and business together. That's a really strong part of a solid economic development plan. And we are super excited, hoping that all of you will be able to make one of them, if not all of them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey,
Sorry,
Shelley,
Yes.
the camera that's working is the one up there, so you want to show it up there.
Oh, sure.
What time does it start again?
6.
6, okay, thank you.
And they should be posted a number of places, so if you want to close up Facebook, we have a website, and Twitter, on all those wonderful social media.
Shelley, what is your website?
Is b-townbeat.com. Yeah, let's see. .com.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Dick West.
Hello, my name is Dick West. I live at 11006 Roseburg Avenue South here in Washington. Anyway, Washington state law requires the city manager to faithfully execute all laws and ordinances. This was put in place, so that the laws that you folks pass are actually executed, and it will actually wind up making this town a lot more desirable and a safer place to live. It also requires that the city council be kept informed on the financial condition of the city. There's hundreds of thousands of dollars that I believe that are unaccounted for. There's projects, such as the annexation boards, business development projects that never materialized. All of these are not showing up on these quarterly status reports that you folks are receiving. I think that if they were there, that we would wind up having a little bit more insight into what is actually happening, and probably have a lot less of me up here. Also, it requires that the council be provided information on council requests, and this has been a hot topic for quite a while, and there is much that could be resolved if the proposals that I've got in this information pack that I've given to the city clerk are followed, because what it'll do is give a set of information that everybody can judge, yay or nay on that. And also, I do believe it is time to look for a new city manager, and I propose that we wind up paying $2,000 a month more to get someone the caliber of a Mercer Island city manager. A person like this is not going to come just for the money. They're going to want to make sure that all the pieces are in line, with the council, and also they all will wind up taking on a large backlog of projects that need to be addressed, as well as they're going to be needing your support to turn the city around. I've also, as I mentioned earlier, attached a much more in-depth copy with Monica. This outline will deal with issues such as the pollution in Lake Burien. It'll deal with the slide dangers in Seahurst, graffiti, bank repos, and slumlord dwellings, and just about everything else, because all of the problems ultimately can be addressed by basically the 4 departments the city manager oversees. That would be finance, legal, planning, and public works. And our current city manager's refusal to follow the law, it needs to be stopped. And if this cannot be done, then really there is going to have to be, I believe, a change of the council. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Next up, we have Trish Woolery, followed by Ronnie Al.
Yes, I am Patricia Woolery. I live at 619 South 140th Street, Burien. I've lived there for 26 years, long before Burien was ever incorporated, and I am upset. In February, I had to consult an attorney for the treatment I was given by the code enforcement officer, Jim Bibby. The end of February, I went up to the 3rd floor and I told him I could care less what that man thinks of me. I don't want to hear it. Just do his job. Well, apparently Jim didn't understand that because he continues to give me a ration of junk. I went to his boss, and his boss started yelling at me, telling me that I was wasting code enforcement's time. I was informed the first part of April that I needed a swimming pool fence. On April 18th, I requested the information be mailed to me. I never received it. On May 20th, I went to a 3rd floor and put it in writing. I was given the code requirements for a professional pool place, not residential. 2 days later, I went back up there on the 22nd, I think, and that's when his boss, Greg Knutson, started yelling at me, telling me I was wasting code enforcement's assistant's time. I was showing her pictures. I took 5 minutes of her time. Then he proceeded to tell me that there was nothing he was gonna do. So I told him I didn't like his attitude either, picked up my pictures and left. I called his boss's office. I believe that's you. No. Mike Martin?
I appreciate the compliment, but yeah, that's not me.
Well, Mike Martin, secretary, said, don't go into details. I'll let him know. Friday morning, the 24th of May, at 9 o'clock straight up in the morning, I received a phone call. I dropped what I was doing, went outside and took the phone call, and the first words out of Mike Martin's mouth is, "You have 30 seconds. I've been a citizen of Burien for 26 years, and this is how I'm treated. I'm fed up with it. I'm still waiting for the residential requirements for a swimming pool fence. And I would like everybody here to see the battle that I'm putting up with my neighbors, blackberries, stacks of wood, and everything else up against my wooden fence. Code enforcement doesn't care."
So, Ms. Woolery, your 3 minutes are up.
Fine.
If you can wrap up. Thank you. Next up, we have Robbie Howell. Okay. Mr. Quentin Thompson?
Good evening, excuse me, good evening audience and good evening council members. I wanted to apologize for a couple of things that happened this last week. Dale has been gone because his mother had a heart attack, and I've been dealing with that. And then I've been dealing with Councilmember Robinson with a friend of mine on a death that occurred last month, so I've been extremely busy, and I've had to be out. And I just got, word from Metro Access Transportation that in September, they're not only cutting some routes in Burien, but they're cutting some routes at a federal way for disabled people, because they're putting in the light rail in Federal Way and Des Moines area, and also that service for disabled people going to Costco will be limited. So there's going to be a public comment number that I will be giving to the council members as soon as I possibly can, and that's all I have to report at this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of our list this evening. If anyone else would like to comment, please go ahead and assemble at the podium, and we'll take you in order. Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name's Greg Anderson, 15451 11th Avenue Southwest. I'm talking about the SMP and the accessory structures. I went back and reviewed all the discussion about Zone 2 and what you didn't want to allow in there, which was houses, redevelopment of houses as far as expanding. And you know, I listened to David's explanation, etc. Well, then I went through and I read, and if you look at what the explanation is, on the first page is what the new regulation is. And if you look at the second and third page, you'll see where accessory structures are not allowed in Zone 1, but are allowed in Zone 2. And if there was going to be a drastic change like this, then that also should have been on the notice that went around to all the people that live on the lake. Everybody on the lake has a Zone 1 and a Zone 2. And the discussion, by watching what was going on, appeared to be extremely limited until I sat down and I read it. And what I'm asking is that you go back to the wording on the document that came out of DOE and use that for the accessory structures. Thank you.
Mr. Anderson?
Yeah.
In the 3 pages, what's important for me to really concentrate on?
Only the accessory structures, just the difference between the new verbiage, which makes it accessory structures not in Zone 1 and 2.
So of the 3 pages, where will I find that?
Right at the bottom on both of them.
Okay.
Accessory structures on the first page, and then you go to the second page at the very bottom, accessory structures, and then the limits on that go over to the second page, and it limits them only in the shoreline buffer, which is what it used to be called, and now it's called Zone 1. And it should go back to this terminology so that you're not limiting people that didn't think that they were limited. I had no idea, and I tried to keep up with this, that there was going to be an additional limit. So I sat down and reread this thing and got into the weeds with it, to the detail, and that's what it says. And it is very specific what accessory structures and what the word structure means. And you guys have been through it, and I'm not asking for any different terminology or any, redefining words. I just wanted the way that it went into DOE and the way it came out, because this is not one of the 4 items that was supposed to be discussed. Thank you.
And that's why I raised it several weeks ago, was I couldn't understand it.
Right, and the letter that went out to some of the property owners, since people didn't get one, they assumed that there was no change.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
My name is Justine Edgar, and I live at 1811 Southwest 152nd Street, Burien, Washington. And the document itself does not define accessory structures in the definitions. So I would ask that Mr. Anderson step up and talk about what he is defining as accessory structures. Appurtenances are not allowed in there. Appurtenances are living structures, and they would be an extension or a creep forward of what are living structures. It's also my understanding that what currently exists in the shoreline may be replaced so that there's a replacement option for things like homes, if that's what needs to be replaced. So this confusion about what accessory structures are and what they're going to be called, I think needs to be defined. But certainly it does not allow appurtenances of any kind. Okay, thank you.
Sir?
Hello, my name is Chuck Randall, live at 15226 9th Avenue Southwest, Burien, center of the known universe. I came to praise and to question. Shakespeare was right. The good that men do is rests with their bones, the evil lives after them. But so too with city and city works, in this case public works. I come to commend the Public Works Department for fixing some of the potholes that I travel every day to and from on my way to work. About 3 months ago, there was one repaired on 160th that was westbound on 160th from the freeway. And recently, there was another pothole replaced on the access ramp just before you get on that 160th, headed south on 509. Both of them have been fixed, and we citizens don't always say the good things about what government does sometimes, and sometimes we should. So I try to avoid that pothole, and cars in front of me are doing the same dance, trying to avoid a pothole. So kudos for that. And on the second half, I'm looking at the Transportation Master Plan, and at the last sentence of the last paragraph that's on the post of the website, it said, by identifying the types of projects that are needed to support future travel trends and providing a framework for evaluating how they fit within community values and fiscal resources. Well, one thing that particularly caught my attention about that was the bicycle lanes. We talked about future travel trends and how they fit the community's values. Now, I use M-bomb between 152nd and 153rd a whole lot because I go down to that exit ramp over there. So I have yet to see anyone use that bicycle lane. I'm not against bicycle lanes, but I'm just wondering, we're talking about the resources and developing a framework for to support future travel trends. How successful was that planning to come up with that idea of lanes, bicycle lanes down there? And was the resources adequately used? So, kudos. And at the same time, questions. Have a good day.
Good evening, Council. I'm Jim Kling, and I live at 14682 22nd Avenue Southwest here in Burien. Appreciate the opportunity to address you tonight, and tonight I would like to address you as one of the 5 members of the SMP working group that spent a little time back in 2012 working on the Shoreline Master Program. I know we would all like to have it in a rearview mirror, but I want to complicate matters a little bit tonight. The request came to you back on May 6th, at your May 6th meeting, about a plan to stop creep or development toward the shoreline. And the way I understood the proposal and your subsequent conversation regarding that proposal afterwards, it seemed like we might be headed for not an opportunity, it seemed like we might be headed for greater restrictions around the lake and the potential for the 30-foot buffer / zone 1 along with the 15-foot setback / zone 2. It seemed like we might be headed for a situation where we would be requiring all properties on Lake Burien to have a total of a 45-foot zone 1 or buffer. There may be a few properties that would cause an issue for on the lake, and I believe those have been discussed and were discussed at your last meeting. However, and I'm not sure exactly where staff is. I haven't had a chance to read in detail the program, but I want to present you with the thought that you may be creating a 45-foot no-touch buffer around the entire Lake Burien community, and whether or not somebody can build in that area, you are creating a no-touch area where the vegetation cannot be disturbed or modified other than to be brought in complete compliance with the native plants in the Department of Ecology. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up.
Hi, I'm Linda Arnie. Can you hear me? Okay. I don't know if this is the appropriate place, but my mom just passed away the 1st of May in Burien Rehab and Nursing. Since I have been talking to people while she was there, I've heard 3 incidents about nursing homes. Not good. Not good. While I was there, they lied to me. Every time they said they pulled on rules on me. They said it has to do with Adult Protective Services. Well, I was aware of this lady, and I called her, and she said once they go in there, it is all theirs. I have nothing to do with it at all. Why would they say that to me? Now, my mom had fallen a couple times out of bed. If I could have stayed there, and I was allowed to stay there, except the social worker had decided I was not a good person to be with my mom. So, she called the shots. She called all the shots. She accused me of doing things I didn't do. And at least I was lucky enough to see her go. Now, this is for everybody, every nursing home, every city, okay? I would like to think Burien would feel proud of their nursing homes. Also, the men, the lowest echelon, whatever, in the system, clean up after the women and the men. It should be women cleaning up after the women. When you're getting down to intimate places, it should be women. And I think the women would agree, or if they have relatives, mothers, whatever, or yourself, you would want a woman taking care of that, not a man. So, I would like to see Burien in particular come up with some way, some objective way
not coming down on Burien, nurses, nursing homes in general. But you can start out with yours. And wouldn't that be great if everybody said, hey, Burien is good, go to one of theirs. Wouldn't that be nice? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rand Turner. I live at 13611 2nd Avenue Southwest. And in regards to the bike lanes on Ambom, I might see them. It does get used. I use it myself. It's actually kind of nice because they were going up the hill. There's a one-mile drive, has a bike lane coming over, and going on the bend with no bike lanes means cars come around and not see you and crash into you, which is never good. So might not be used a whole lot, but the more the bike lanes are put in place with places to ride, more people do use them. It's been proven. When on Seattle, we have more bike lanes. There's been a constant uptick in bicycle usage. The Cascade Bike Club is on a bike count every year. It's constantly going up for greater bicycle facilities. That is probably the future use of the transportation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. No further comments. We'll move on with our agenda this evening. There is no correspondence for the record for anyone to view. Can we get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Okay, can we please register our votes? Okay, agenda is approved 6-1. We'll take a go back, voting no. For the business agenda this evening, our first item is a motion to approve appointments to Parks and Recreation Board. Can I get a motion, please?
I move to appoint 4 members, Ed Dacey, Jackie Smith, Cheryl Knowles, and Rob Johnson to the Parks and Recreation Board to full terms beginning on June 6, 2013 and ending on March 31st, 2017.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, can we go to register our votes? Motion is approved unanimously. Next up, we have a motion to adopt ordinance on 581, approving updates to the Burien Shoreline Master Program and authorizing its submission to the Department of Ecology. Mr. Johansson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Bennett, members of City Council. A very brief introduction to the item. So the purpose of the agenda item is to take action on ordinance 581, approving updates to the Burien Shoreline Master Program and authorizing its submittal to the Department of Ecology for review and approval. At your last meeting, which was on May 20th, the City Council requested that two documents be added to the Shoreline Master Program as appendices. Those 2 documents are a bird inventory prepared by Justine Edgar, dated February 2010, and the second document is the list of species protected in the King County Comprehensive Plan and Critical Areas Ordinance, dated 2009. And so I've included those as appendices 5F and 5G respectively, so those have been included. The other item was council directed staff to mail letters, which we heard comment on, to property owners within close proximity of the 45-foot shoreline buffer. We identified 8 homes during that process, and the letter is in your packet. It's attachment 2 to the agenda bill, and it is page 515 of the council packet. On the back of the letter is the actual list that the letter was mailed to. And so that concludes my presentation. I'm here to assist you in your deliberations.
Any questions or comments? Councilmember McGill.
I was the one that requested that the homeowners be notified if there was, as Mr. Klingman voiced it, a no-touch zone of the 30-foot buffer in the 15-foot setback. Now, as we discussed early on, starting our discussion on May 6th, it was to add some language that would put in a stricter requirement for Lake Burien homeowners, not necessarily mirrored by the marine homeowners. And I want the two to be compatible in their ability to use Zone 2. So I am thoroughly confused as to what the language is in the present document, and are they compatible with the marine homeowners requirements?
The requirements for Zone 2 are different between the marine and the lake. And that was kind of given the conversation of the working group did their work and came up with a concept for the Zone 2. And then there was added discussion and direction at the council meeting to revert back to more of a similar proposal that was originally submitted to the Department of Ecology, which in essence was very little activity was allowed in what we're calling Zone 2 now, or what was then called the setback. So the only minor adjustment that is in this proposal than what was originally submitted to Department of Ecology is you may be able to do at-grade structures.
Right.
Okay? That was in response to when we looked at the Zone 1, Zone 2 option, that there were a number of homes that were fairly close. And given that, it seemed, reasonable to allow some activity to occur in Zone 2, but we must be reminded that it would also be mitigated because there is a mitigation requirement that goes along with any activity in Zone 2.
Can we just back up for a second, Mr. Johnson? So I understand, when we're talking about Zone 2, are we talking about Lake Burien and the marine shoreline, or are we talking about one or the other?
I was specifically talking about, in this case, the Lake Burien Zone 2.
So at 45 feet, there can be no accessory dwellings and very limited appurtenances on Lake Burien.
Generally, yes, that's correct, yes.
Now, that isn't consistent with what we're allowing in the marine zone 2. That's my issue right here. I want the Lake Burien homeowners who are having property in Zone 2 to be treated exactly like the marine homeowners are being treated. And I don't think that's the language in this latest document.
Yeah, and that would be correct, because I think there was a different set of desires from the marine property owners, as they did want some ability to expand in Zone 2. But the idea, the concept there is you have the worksheet, and if you did expand, you would be doing mitigation, and it was encouraged to happen in Zone 1, which is closer to the water. So that was kind of the trade-off, is the whole idea was to be able to mitigate, and you might, do some expansion of your home, but that would be offset, so we would achieve no net loss by doing mitigation in Zone 1 or in Zone 2.
So my preferred option to the council is to have the marine homeowners and the lake homeowners treated exactly the same. Now, it's up to this council to say whether they agree or disagree with me.
Follow up on Councilman Gilman's comments. So, and also to address Mr. Anderson's comments in public comment. So my understanding of what we had requested and what we were going to do was to go back to what we had sent to DOE and what was sent back to us for Lake Burien. And so, my understanding from Mr. Anderson's public comments was that's not where we're at right now. So I just want to get your perspective on where we're at right now.
My understanding, and I haven't gone back and researched the exact language of what was submitted to ecology before this meeting, so I might be a little rusty here. But what we did is we tried to, what was in the previous version to DOE was a 15-foot setback. In essence, you were very limited in what you could do in that 15-foot area. In now revisiting the Zone 1 and Zone 2, we'll call it concept or approach, is we had to kind of match that up the best we could. And so we proposed the language in here that would eliminate any expansion of homes, but it would allow, or it would not allow, would not allow accessory structures. Accessory structures are a defined term in the zoning code. So a structure is a defined term in the zoning code, and we would apply that definition. There are certain things that do not qualify as structures. For example, decks that are less than 18 inches, paved areas, things like that, or patios. So, in essence, what we have in this document here is you may do some disturbance in Zone 2 as long as it's not a structure.
Okay, so as far as the treatment of accessory structures then, in what we sent to DOE versus this though, we're not entirely sure whether it's the same.
I believe there was, accessory structures are not allowed in a setback. So that's what we sent to DOE.
And that's Zone 2.
And that's Zone 2, correct.
Councilmember Ross.
I just, this pops up in various places through the code here. If you go to page 4-39, which is page 111 in the packet, you've got section K, detached accessory dwelling units shall not be located in shoreline buffer. So detached accessory dwelling is not allowed at all.
Correct.
Then you go back to the section that Mr. Anderson referred to, which refers to detached accessory structures, would not be allowed at all in the buffer zones either. So what you've got is no attached or no detached accessory structures, no detached accessory dwellings at all, no new detached accessory structures. So if you were replacing a detached garage or shed, you would be okay.
Correct.
Zone 2?
In Zone 2, because that's not a new structure.
In Zone 1 or in Zone 2, what you have, you can maintain and replace.
Right, and then you go back to page 4-22, which is page 94 in the packet. And let's see, new and expansions of existing single-family homes around Lake Burien are not allowed in buffer zone 2. So what you've got then is essentially the no build area in both buffers around Lake Burien.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Even though you could do mitigated expansion of a single-family home in buffer 2 in the marine environment.
Exactly, that's my point.
So what are we looking to do here?
Up to the council.
So my understanding is, so how I thought we were going to handle going back to what we had proposed to DOE was we were just going to eliminate the Zone 1 and Zone 2 references for Lake Burien and go back to the setback and buffers that we had originally. But we didn't do exactly that, is that correct?
We did not do exactly that, but we used the concept, which I thought was, because then you're going to have setback and you're going to have buffer zone 1 and buffer zone 2. So having a level of consistency when how you apply buffers made sense.
Okay.
And so that's how we applied it. And so we had to adjust some of the language to go back to the original intent of that ecology submittal.
Okay, so I think the question that is, Councilmember Gill alluded to, the council decision on how we want to handle it. So we've got a couple of options here. One, we've got the marine, the schematics we worked out for the marine shoreline of Zone 1 and Zone 2. We've got the substance of what we had proposed to DOE prior to the shoreline working group. And then the question of whether what we've got now is consistent. And so my understanding, Mr. Johansson, is that we tried to get those general concepts in, but we haven't confirmed exactly that the language is consistent with what we had proposed to DOE. Is that correct?
The substance and the intent is there. The exact language is not. So what we tried to do is maintain that Zone 1, Zone 2 framework, because we think that's good. and there's a lot of work, and it does allow some flexibility, does allow something to occur in zone 2 if it's mitigated, which we think is good.
In the marine.
In both. In both. In the marine or the lake. So in essence, we used the concept of the zone 1 and zone 2 and applied the framework of what was submitted to ecology.
And so if we pass this evening and we wanted to come back and we ascertain that there is some language that wasn't exactly how we've been discussing, what would the amendment process be with the DOE?
Yeah, and that's a great question because this is brand new for the city. This is a complete, basically writing it from scratch. And so I fully anticipate that we're going to learn something here. And being so new, we're going to learn how to apply this. So the process would be, we would have to do the amendment process and get DOE approval. I don't know, I can't tell you off the top of my head how long that would take, but I would fully anticipate working with the document for a year to 2 years, depending on what we find out, and coming back like we do with our zoning code on a regular basis. Things have changed, or we found a better way, or this is unclear. I fully anticipate that to occur here.
Okay. So we've got the motion before us, which is the document before us. Any further discussion? Oh, okay, we haven't made the motion yet, so please go ahead.
I move to adopt ordinance number 581, approving updates to Burien's Shoreline Master Program and authorizing its submission to the Department of Ecology.
Second.
Okay, further questions and comments? Councilmember McGill.
I think I've clearly stated my concern about fairness. I'm willing to do what we need to do to be consistent with existing Department of Ecology language. I've said what I have to say, it's gone on record, and to expedite this, I'm willing to vote yes tonight. But I want to ensure that we are being absolutely consistent with the Department of Ecology approved language.
Okay, and I would like to make sure of that too, and if that's not the case, then I would like to revisit this, but keeping staff's comments on that, I can live with that for now.
I can live with that too. I would really like to vote yes tonight.
Councilmember Block.
I'd like to finish this up too. My concern is coming back and amending it will be a long and lengthy process, which would be longer than perhaps waiting a meeting and having the language be consistent between the saltwater and freshwater shorelines. Again, I would prefer to do it tonight, but given the amount of work and time that we've already put into it, another meeting's wait to get the language right. I think it is worth it, so I would prefer to wait and get the language the way we would like it.
Councilmember Clark.
I too am not looking forward to having to amend this soon. So I would rather wait also until we have the language consistent and vote on it at a future meeting rather than having to go back to amend it. We've been working on this since '09.
So I guess just so I understand the request that you're both making, so staff has told us that this is consistent with what we proposed to DOE and what we got back. So are you proposing that we change the language, or are you just asking for confirmation of what staff has told us?
I want confirmation that for the person that's on the marine shore and the person that's on the freshwater shore have the same rights and responsibilities as each other.
Well, what we've got before us is not the same, right? So in the meeting we had a month ago, we gave staff direction to separate out the marine shoreline from Lake Burien. And so we've got the new zone 1 and zone 2 on the marine shoreline, and we're going back to pre-working group zone 1 and zone 2, the substance of that for Lake Burien. Mr. Jansen, please correct me if I'm misstating.
Yes, you're stating it correctly.
So, and just, I just want to make sure we're clear, so it is not exactly the same where we're at, what we're proposing right now, and this direction we gave to staff was to not do the exact same for the Moon and Lake Burien. That's a council decision. If we want to revisit that and make it the same, we certainly can do that, but that will be different than the direction we gave staff for this document.
And I would rather make that change now, rather than adopt this now and then having to reopen it soon and go through an amendment process. If we delay the vote a meeting or two, to me it would be preferable to having to open again.
Okay, but what we're talking about doing though would be changing the direction we gave to staff if we want to make it equal. Okay, so but yes, you're proposing that we go back to the zone 1 and zone 2. Okay. And Councilmember Block, is that also where you wanted it? Okay. So just want to make sure we're all clear on that. Next up, Councilmember McGill.
I want to vote on this tonight. I think what we're talking about is a nuance that was important to me, but I'm willing to leave it to city staff to make the appropriate decisions. My primary goal is to be consistent with Department of Ecology review comments. So if they didn't comment on this, I'm willing to vote today to have Mr. Johansson check and make sure the language is consistent and that we just go with that. We don't open it up for anything. I apologize for raising this. I just thought it was important for those 8 homeowners to be aware of what the discussion was. So I would like the council to vote tonight on this.
Okay. Any further comments? Seeing none, can we go ahead then and, so there are no motions then, or amendments to the motion we have before us?
That would be a reluctant yes, hoping that we don't have to come back in the next year or two and work again on this.
Okay.
We've spent an awful lot of time, and there are other parts of the city that have been neglected while we have worked on this because we have limited staff. And I would like other parts of the city to have their needs recognized.
And I do think that staff time will be better spent fixing this, getting it right now, rather than coming back later. So I'll be a no vote.
Okay, so I guess, seeing no further comments, I'll wrap up. I would like to follow up on Mr. Johansson's comment. I think this is brand new. It is very substantial. So I would assume that we are going to have revisions that we're going to request and we're going to learn about how this is implemented. So I fully expect that we will be amending this in the not too distant future. And given that, I'm willing to move forward on it now. I appreciate staff's work on it and the public's work. One point, and general point that I would like to make about this process, I've been involved with it from the very start. I think it shows, what we're doing here is unprecedented as far as I'm aware in the state of Washington, in that we pushed back on the Department of Ecology and worked this out with them without them suing us. And I think it shows what our community is capable of when we are working together on something. I have talked to individuals who've been involved in this process due to differences with their neighbors who no longer communicate with their neighbors because of their differences on this. And the one general point that I would like to make is that I think for us to be successful as a city, if we all work together and respectfully acknowledge our differences, I think we will definitely be successful. If we're not able to work together though, and we let issues like this divide us, I think that it will be difficult for us to succeed and get our best people working on things. So I'd like us to keep that in mind as we move forward. I think that general issue was raised in this process, and I hope we can move past that as a community and prioritize being good neighbors above all else, and I think then we will succeed as a community. With that, can we go ahead and register our votes? It is approved 6-1 with Councilmember Block voting no. Before we move on with our next agenda item, I do, at staff's request, I would like to acknowledge one particular individual that has worked on this, Mr. Noakes. Staff saw this photo and they thought it was emblematic of the work Mr. Noakes in particular has done for our community. And this is a picture of some air balloons, and I think the general message was that he has gone above and beyond the duty in this. And so we want to give that to Mr. Noakes.
Thank you to everybody who arranged this happen, and thank you to all residents of Burien for their help with this very difficult process.
And the working group
And the working group.
that you worked with successfully to go to ecology and have a frank conversation. It's very important that all 5 of you be acknowledged, just because you were out in front of us all the time.
And indeed, I would also like to thank DOE. They did render a lot of help in trying to negotiate with the city and find, this balanced approach we work together on. So I do admire the work of DOE in this effort. Thank you.
And also, just very quickly, I would like to acknowledge the work that Mr. Johansson has done on this. It's been, I believe, 7 perhaps long years of work on this.
I don't know that long, but
I think 6 or 7. So thank you again, Mr. Johansson. With that, we will move on to the next item, which is a presentation of the 2012 annual police report.
Mayor Bennett, members of the council, I'm Scott Kimmer, I'm the police chief here. And again, I'm pleased to provide you with our annual report of the goings-ons of the police department and the community for 2012. I'm not going to go over in depth with a lot of these slides. There are several of them. They provide a visual and people can see what the numbers are. I did want to put this one up in particular because in my 34 years of doing this, I have long since tried to forget how, or not try to figure out how crime patterns occur. It is very difficult to predict how crime occurs. It's very difficult to look at the fluctuating in crime rates and the types of crimes that go on. But one of the things that I think is very important when you're going over the last year and looking at what was the patterns was this third bullet point, which is focus on a comprehensive problem-solving approach through analysis and crime prevention. What we try to do is these statistics are going to fluctuate. Sometimes they're going to go up, sometimes they're going to go down. A lot of times they stay the same. What we do not want to see is we don't want to see the city of Burien rising at a higher rate than surrounding communities. We don't want to see a very large increase in crime. The little increases that occur, again, unpredictable, not sure how we could ever figure out how that happens. But as we look at, and I'm looking at that second bullet point too, as we look at crime trends as they emerge, and if we can find some problem-solving approaches, using the community, using crime prevention to prevent these kinds of large increases in crime, I think that's where our measure of success is. So again, I'm not going to go too in depth on these. As you know, in 2010 was when we went through our annexation process and we increased our population. And as we look at the numbers going from 2010 to 2012, not a huge increase in the number of Part 1 crimes. I think, if I remember right, I'm trying to remember what the actual increase in population was. I do have something here in there. I'm sorry. Was it 12 to 14? I'm trying to remember what the increase was. Anyway, so we're not looking at this annexation, the increase in population that we had, creating any kind of substantial crime problems for the city of Burien. We did see an increase, a slight increase in the Part 1 crimes, and for 2012. But again, it was not something that I felt was substantial, and there's any numbers of factors that could lead to these small increases. We look at the violent crime rate comparison. Of course, that is something that we want to have down to 0. I think that as I looked at that, everything consistently over 2012, we did have a slight increase, somewhere between 5 and 7% increases in these crime rates. As you look at the comparisons of other cities around us, some are lower, some are higher. All the areas in my analysis was that crime went up a bit in 2012 in our surrounding communities. It is certainly something that we pay attention to. It's certainly something that we will continue to strive to reduce. But these crime rates, just for information, these are per 1,000 population. So when we look at 5.6, it's 5.6 per 1,000 population in the city of Burien and all these other cities. It gives us a way to measure with our communities that have these varying populations where we stand. Part 2 crimes are the ones that affect more people. They're more the day-to-day, their vandalisms, their trespassing, their the minor narcotics and drunkenness and crimes like that. We did go down slightly in 2012, and that always is a good sign. I mean, these are the ones that really affect people more. They're a matter of you know, kind of your quality of life issues in the community. So we did see those go down. Again, looking at the comparisons to other cities, where everybody is right around in the same general area, and we're higher than some and lower than others. I do want to make a comment. This slide had the wrong number on it, so I did have to correct that. So your packet shows a different number, but that's where our crime rate for Part 2 crimes are. This is the overall crime rate comparison, with the exception of the city of SeaTac, which did see a little bit more of a dramatic crime increase in their overall crime rate. We went up, like I said, 7%. We were at 55 last year, and we were at 59 this year. So, again, these kinds of patterns, if we looked over the last 5 years, we are within 5 to 7% over those 5 years of where our crime rate was. Always striving to bring it down, and we look for our ways to get the community involved, to get more innovative ways of addressing crime issues. So, again, for when we look at this, as long as we don't have a huge spike, as long as we're not seeing a crime rate wave in Burien, I think that these numbers stay within the entire region of southwest King County. We did have a fairly significant increase in our calls for service. We've been monitoring that since the 2010 annexation of how people are getting involved. I mean, we want people to call in to the police department. We want to have people reporting what they see and reporting crime when it happens. So we did have a significant increase in our dispatch calls for service, and that is a driving factor for almost everything else that we report out on, is how many of our citizens are calling us with issues that they have. Not much to explain about this. This is just with increased crime, with increased dispatch calls for service, we make more arrests. And the significance of the amount of arrests we make, they do have a financial impact on the city. We are doing very well with our SCORE jail and utilizing that. I think that there's a huge benefit to us as far as our officers having a very close place to book in people that we arrest, so they're not taken off the street for any significant period of time. But with everything else, our arrests also went up. Traffic accidents are down. As you're aware, we do not have a dedicated traffic enforcement in Burien. This is our officers out in amongst their daily patrol, amongst their answering calls for service. They do traffic enforcement. It's always a good number to see go down when we have less accidents. So again, this is more for information and illustration. This is something that's generally very important to people, is how fast we get to them when they do call us. Priority X are the highest priority calls, and then it goes priority 2. There are also priority 3 calls for service. Those are the ones where there is no immediate danger issue. It's something that when we get to a slide here a little bit in the future, when we see how busy our police officers are out there in the city of Burien, it does take some time to get to these priority 3 calls. But it's very important for us with the priority X and priority 1 that we have good response times to those. Now this one I already had a council member talk to me about, and it probably has a little explaining to do. These are our complaints against officers, and as that number 15 up there, obviously a considerably higher number than the 3 in the 2 years that we had just 1. There's been a lot going on around the region as far as the police departments, and specifically I can point to the Seattle Police Department and their Department of Justice investigation, what has been going on with them as far as the citizen complaints about transparency and reporting misconduct. So last year, and as most people are aware, we have had 3 sheriffs in the last 3 years, with the current sheriff, John Urquhart. And over those, especially the last 2 years, we have really done a lot to look at how we are taking complaints, how we are logging complaints, the investigation of complaints, and we have had some significant policy changes in there. And in those policy changes, that has driven that number up. I still would want you to look at the fact that we've had 15 officer complaints for over 16,000 calls for service. I think that that's a pretty good ratio. But just know that the Sheriff's Office has looked at their policies and procedures. We commissioned an audit of our internal investigations. There were recommendations that came from that audit, and because of that, we are attempting to be much more transparent and much more responsive to these complaints, and so that's why the number went up. One of the focuses that I've had since I have been here is the violence on the street. And several years back, I took 2 of our officer positions and put them in a gang unit. We also have a special emphasis team that's out there. We had years past in this region a very significant problem with gun violence, and that has been the mission, especially of the gang unit and of the SET team, and just generally patrol officers, to find illegal guns on the street and take them out of the hands of those people. So last year, it pretty much speaks for itself. We took 114 guns off the street. Now, in King County Sheriff's Office, we do not sell these guns back. These guns are destroyed. In that, we also found 3 machine guns in working with different, through narcotics investigations, through just random patrol, through the gang unit focusing on our criminal gang activity. And I think that that is a significant number of guns that were taken off the street last year, and that will continue to be the focus of ours in the future. So just basically wrapping up a little bit on what the difference from 2011 to 2012. Again, 7% increase in Part 1 crimes, 13% decrease in Part 2 crimes. There's some other data in there that I'm going to go over here briefly, and because the responsibility of the police department is not only dealing with the criminal element out there and making the city safe, and it's also, we have some fiscal responsibility. We realize in the police department, we are the biggest budget item that you have in city government. And so it's very important for us to be cognizant of that and be fiscally responsible.
Chief, I don't think everybody knows the difference between Part 1 and Part 2. Would you just give a brief explanation?
Okay, yeah, I think I went over what Part 2 was. Part 1 are the more serious crimes, crimes against persons, burglaries, larcenies, you know, the murder fits in there, and assault, and vehicle theft. They're again, it basically breaks down into serious crimes and then more of the crimes that are quality of life crimes.
Do they divide easily into misdemeanors and felonies?
No, not necessarily.
Okay, thank you.
Because larcenies, we do all larcenies, so some of those are misdemeanors. Okay. So this is just a rundown of over the past year. One of the most significant issues that we have is the calls per officer. So our calls per officer, we have in Burien probably the highest call load per officer in King County. And each individual officer will handle 584 calls a year, and that's up 10% from last year. The dispatch calls are up 7%, and if you look at Part 1 crimes and increase in dispatch calls, that they kind of coincide there. So the more calls that are reported, or the more calls that come in, generally will indicate more crimes that are reported. Domestic violence, it's something we keep track of. It's not an area that we have a lot of influence on, but we do like to keep track of it, just to see how the community is doing. And that was down 17% last year. Now that might be a little hard to read, but again, this just gives an idea of surrounding cities, or the cities in King County, of what their budgets are, what their populations are, how many sworn officers are in each of those. It breaks down the cost per capita for the cities, and it just gives us an indication of where we stand. The last category is the sworn officers per 1,000, and that just kind of indicates where we are as far as our staffing levels in King County, or in Burien, I'm sorry. This was the last slide I wanted to throw up there, and again, reconciliation, just a brief explanation for people watching, is the King County Sheriff's Office provides a contract for the city of Burien, and we provide a contract amount every year. And at the end of the year, the city of Burien pays only actual costs. There's never an estimation or a median cost. It is the actual cost. It's very important to us in the city of Burien, and because of policies that the Sheriff's Office has instituted, as well as policies that myself and Captain Carl Cole have instituted over the year, we try to provide a reconciliation every year back to the city. So we budget for a contract amount at the beginning of the year, and then at the end of the year, if we can come in under that amount, this represents what we've done in the last 4 years, which has resulted in $1.6 million that we have saved on our contracts. So I thought that was significant, that again, we're trying to be responsible with the city's money and what we do. And that's my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Chief Kimmerer. So before we start our discussion of this, very quickly, I would like to acknowledge also we have another very important piece of our law enforcement puzzle here in the audience tonight, Judge Ide from the Burien District Court. Just want to acknowledge you joined us this evening. And so with that, so one question I have, if we have questions or comments, please let me know, but the one thing that I would like to make sure that we discuss is that we leave I think that you touched on the majority of our budget is for the police services. We appreciate it. I mean, you guys do a wonderful job. We appreciate it, but I think this is, without question, the most important thing the city does, is to try to provide security for our city. And so I just want to make sure that we're not leaving any stone unturned. If there are things that we can do better or do differently, anything that we can do to make our community safer, I'd like us all to discuss this, and in particular Chief Kemmer, to make sure that we get it all out on the table and see if there is anything we could be doing better. So with that, I'd like to open it up for further questions and comments. Councilmember McGill.
I just want you to personally thank all your officers and how appreciative we are on the Burien City Council for the terrific job that they do and their response times for as many calls as your deputies are responding to. I, as a council member, feel very good that our police department is doing what we're asking them to do. I also want to acknowledge how well your Block Watch program is working at the neighborhood level. I think that's so important that when we have a mini crime wave in our neighborhood, that we get instant response from the police department on how we can be safer. So I appreciate everything that you've done, and I want that passed on to your officers who are amazing.
I do it every day.
I do it from the council. I
Yes,
don't
I
know
know.
that they see that when we get a report like this, we nod our heads in the right direction. Thank you.
Councilmember Block.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, can you bring up that figure with officers per thousand?
I can.
You just had it up there.
Yeah, I have, this is a little bit bigger. That says the same thing. So our officer per thousand is 1.5 per thousand.
Okay, I wanted to use that as a comparison with some of the other cities.
Okay.
And I think it's important to bring that up to illustrate the job that your officers are doing. Basically, as I understand, the FBI recommends a staffing level of two officers per thousand.
You know, it's been a standard that is difficult to measure because it really depends on the city. There are cities, the city of Sammamish, at 0.5 officers per thousand. But it's a bedroom community. It's very low crime rate. It's probably, they do fine at that level. It really, you know, there are more factors that go into the officers per thousand of what really is needed. It's hard to use that as a standard. But you're right, in the past, the FBI has used somewhere in the neighborhood of 2. Right, as far as I know, I think Seattle and Snoqualmie, that's interesting, are a higher rate than 2.
I think it's Tukwila, actually, right below.
Oh, Tukwila. Well,
Tukwila is a special.
oh, there it is, yeah. Well, then it's necessary.
Well, anyway, I wanted to highlight that. The comparisons I use are Auburn and Kent, and Auburn has 1.42 officers per thousand, and Kent 1.23. And there's cities of similar size and demographics, so I think it's important to highlight how well our officers are working. Unfortunately, from my perception, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things that I see is that our officers are so busy answering calls, we don't have enough officers to do proactive, preventative police work. Something I think that they all take to heart and would like to do more of. And I think that we as a community, as a council, need to make a decision and a commitment that we want to have as safe as community as possible and put more officers on the street. I appreciate your efforts to try to obtain a grant last year. It's unfortunately that the majority of the council decided not to follow through on that, but I appreciate those efforts and I hope that you'll continue to do that. But in the interim, we have to look at ways that as a community, are we willing to step up and pay a little bit more in our taxes for more police officers. And I realize that this is an election year. That's an uncomfortable subject for people to bring up. But, you know, we all want to be safe, and it's uncomfortable talking to somebody who's a victim of crime. I'd rather talk about this than talk to a crime victim. So I want to put this in financial terms. Right now, you have listed it costs $202,000 to put an officer on the street. The recent study that we had listed $218,000. A little bit of disparity, but basically about the same amount. So to put 10 more officers on the street would be approximately $2 million. $1 billion of assessed value in Burien works out to $1.6 million. Our revenue from sales tax and property tax are about the same, about $7 million. So as a community, we're going to have to make a decision. Do we want to commit to spending that money to add more officers? Is $2 million an appropriate amount? Is 10 officers an appropriate amount? But I'd like to see us have a goal to have enough officers to do proactive police work, and also to get our crime rate per thousand below 50 per thousand. I think that's a good metric to shoot for. And I want our officers to have time to be able to do preventative police work and not have to spend all their time on calls. So I want to thank you and your officers for the hard work they're doing. These numbers tell it all, and we're very blessed to have a hardworking, professional police force here in Burien. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Clark.
Thank you. I too want to make sure that you thank your officers on our behalf. And I'm curious, I have three things. Two, regarding block watch. I thought a year or two ago that our block watch in the residential areas was decreasing. And I'm not sure that I'm remembering correctly. So I'm interested in knowing if I'm right on that, and are we doing, how are we doing with business block watch?
So the variation in block watch is not very much, one way or another. What we have and what we hear about are when neighborhoods or blocks don't have a block watch, or the block watch captain moved away and so they don't have that anymore. We have consistently had, it's very apparent, and I know that most of the council go out on National Night Out, that we have a tremendous block watch in the city of Burien, and we have higher numbers than anywhere that I'm aware of as far as the block watches for a community our size. I don't know the exact numbers, and I can get that to you, but we did have a push for some more block watches. I know that we had citizens talk to us about areas that didn't have block watches, and for us to try to see if we could get neighbors to get together to have block watches. There has never been any significant decrease in block watches or significant increase, but I think they're extremely valuable, and whatever we can do to provide more help to establish them is great. The business watch, we are still in the process of doing that. Our community service officer, Nikki Moralja, has been working pretty diligently on that, and it's just a matter of building the contact base, building a distribution list, and it's something that's been well received, and we're continuing to move forward with that. That is also something that I can get information to you of how many businesses we have established now in that business watch.
I would be interested in updates on both of those. And then I have a question about the courts, and I don't know if this information is available, but I know that you have saved us as a city money, and I know the county has been working between the jail and the court system to revamp some of their processes in an effort to cut costs there and provide better, more efficient service. So is there a report out there regarding what's been going on in the last few years that could be made available to us so that we understand that?
That would have to be something that the court and especially Lori Fleming, who's been works very closely with the court, would probably be able to provide to you. I did talk to the court today, as a matter of fact, and there are things that our court does that are services. They may not come down to dollars and cents, but they provide some significant services to us that would be difficult to do without. And we are constantly, I think we have one of the best relationships with the district court. We have monthly meetings with them. We have always been able to look at any kind of problem or issue, and especially some of those that cost money, and work out solutions with them. But I would assume that there's a similar report as we provide for the contract that would provide the details of the court. What I asked for that I'd be happy to pass on is what are those services that the King County District Court provides to us, because we are, first of all, because we are all King County entity, and also because of that great working relationship we have with them.
Okay, I can check with Lori. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Robson.
I just wanted to add a comment on the whole thing about officers per thousand. You look at the chart here, the city with the lowest crime rate, Sammamish, also has by far the lowest number of officers per thousand. The city with the highest crime rate has the highest number per thousand. Obviously, this has to do with a lot more than just number of officers per thousand people. Especially look at Black Diamond, has a very low rate and also has a very high number of officers per thousand. I think this is the kind of thing that the city council makes a decision based on consultation with the professionals, our police chief and his staff, to determine what's appropriate. What I prefer to do is compare the crime rates to other cities around us. And Burien compares very favorably. You take a look at SeaTac, Tukwila, Renton, compares very favorably with those cities. And just to go back a little bit to the whole grant thing, it was a grant that was going to cost us a lot more money than the grant at a time when we were already having to look at either cutting other services, raising taxes, or doing what we did. We held back on expenses and dipped into our savings to pay for the city. Dipping further into the savings to pay for more police officers at a time when we were looking at whether we were going to be able to pave streets, maintain parks. It would have been irresponsible to the city as a whole. The police department is one of many departments in the city, and it is part of a balanced system. So that's the comment I had to make.
Councilmember Block.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to respond to that. Chief Kimmer was very fortunate in obtaining a grant for 3 officers. We took advantage of part of that grant to obtain a school resource officer. We had funding available that would have paid a quarter of the salary for 2 more officers. I made proposals in October and December that we adjust our garbage utility fee and shift it back to the general fund, and have a modest tax increase of $10 a year. Add 2 more officers. I've talked to a number of citizens, and I've asked them straight up, would you be willing to pay $10 a year more to add 2 more cops? And every answer I've gotten is yes. So I brought it up, and I'm proud I brought it up, and I'm disappointed that the council did not follow through on this grant, which would have paid a quarter of the salary of 2 officers for 3 years. And as to number of officers per 1,000, I think it's an important metric, especially when we compare ourselves to other cities. And what I've observed and what I've heard from our police force, basically they spend all their time reacting to calls. We are stretched so thin and our officers work so hard that they're able to deal with the calls that they receive. As you can see from the figures, our numbers have increased. But unfortunately, they're so busy responding to calls, they don't have the time they need to be able to do proactive, preventative crime prevention, stopping crime before it happens. That's what I think we want our police force to do. And right now, we don't have enough officers for our police force to be able to effectively do that. You know, we're very blessed. We have a hardworking, diligent police force. And I say, let's give them the resources to keep our community safe.
Councilmember Robinson.
Using any rough metric like number of officers per thousand is a lazy metric. It's a lazy way of calculating anything. It's like trying to figure out the value of a property by applying a multiplier to the assessed value. The city budget is an organism. The city is an organism, and all the parts have to work together. And another $300,000 a year out of our budget at a time when we were dipping in more than $500,000 to cover existing expenses is not responsible. So I'm happy to leave it to the professionals that run our police department, run our city, to make the recommendations that we make decisions on. But I'm sure that Chief Kimmerer isn't basing his requirements on some rough indicator like number of officers per 1,000 people.
Okay. So with that, I'd like to go back to my initial question and steps we can take. And one of which potentially would be to add more police. And so I guess the initial question is would there potentially be a way to quantify the benefits that we would get from a safety perspective if we were able to add more police?
I believe there would be. I believe that what you would be able to do is what Councilmember Block is talking about regarding emphasis, regarding preventative measures, preventing or looking at the high-profile crime. I always am very, very reluctant to talk about increasing the police department or increasing my budget. That's not a decision that I want to get involved with, because I feel very supported by the city council. I've always felt, I've been here, I'm in my 11th year as the police chief here, and I've always felt very supported by the council. We are, if you look at our numbers, we are lower in our staffing than a lot of cities are. Burien, you can't compare Burien to a Sammamish or Black Diamond or some of those. We do have issues that we need to address. So, if asked, if offered, I would be happy to come up with something. I think that between myself and my genius assistant chief, Carl Cole, that we could quantify that. But again, I feel very supported by the council, and I don't, I've been asked this question a number of years in the past. It's very difficult for me to come up with an answer to it.
You have a very practiced and politic response to it, though, so I want to come into it. That I acknowledge that it might be an unfairly direct question to put you on the spot like that, but that's still a helpful perspective. So, yeah, we'll follow up then on that one when we have the city manager here. Are there any other steps beyond adding police, that anything that the city council or the city can do to support making our community more safe that you're aware of?
No, I think that those things that we need to do to examine what we do as a police department are something that is constant. We are always looking at what focus we provide, what staffing levels I have for different projects, or what staffing levels I have for different units. Are we getting the best response out of that? So there really isn't, again, I feel supported by the city manager and the city council. I have been, left to make decisions that move us forward as a police department, and I'm happy for the feedback from the council as far as what they feel are priorities, and I'd like to be responsive to that. If there are things that there's a feeling, either through community interaction or, just your own observations that we can do better, I'm happy to listen to it and, work on a plan to deal with those. I think that's probably the biggest, help that I get from the council as people, as members of the council saying, I've got a problem here, we have a problem here. It's very difficult for us to know everything that's going on out there. We rely heavily on that kind of community feedback so we know what to deal with.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Burien.
I just want to remind the council that we have a $16 million general fund. Of that, 52% goes to police and courts. More than half our budget supports what the community defines as our highest priority. When we ask citizens to rank police services, it doesn't come up that high. I think the city generally feels fairly safe. But if we are going to add, as Councilmember Block suggests, $2 million to a budget, either we decrease the general fund operating budget by $2 million to cover the increase in police officers, or we find $2 million from our community and probably a levy to be able to support this. So I want to be very pragmatic and practical. I feel that 52% of our general fund budget does support the police department, and we need to remind ourselves we are a contract city. We pay for the services that we want. We've looked at this, I've been on council for 12 years. I think we've probably looked at police services and the contract 10 out of 12 years. I remember the discussion we had about why are they getting this big pay increase, and we thought we would have some influence on that. We found out we had none. So it's been a good discussion among council, but 52% of our budget goes to support police services, and I think you're doing a dynamite job. Thank you.
Okay, with that, seeing no further comments, we'll move on for this evening. Thank you very much again, Mr. Chief Kimmer. Our next business agenda item is a public hearing and discussion on the 2014 through 2019 6-year transportation improvement program. So, Mr. Roberts, can you please describe that?
My name is Brian Roberts. I'm a new face to most of you. I'm your new Assistant Public Works Director, and I just wanted to preface my comments before we launch into the presentation by saying that I am absolutely delighted to be here serving the community that I grew up in, and look forward to a lengthy time of service here with the City of Burien. So thank you for the opportunity. This is regarding the annual renewal for the 6-year transportation improvement plan. Why do we do this on an annual basis? This is the 6-year TIP, as I'll call it, is a valuable tool. It's useful when we're coordinating with neighboring jurisdictions, especially where we may have roadways that cross from, say, the City of Burien to SeaTac or Normandy Park. And it enables those staff to be able to coordinate among themselves across jurisdictional boundaries for certain projects. It also allows us to be able to coordinate with WashDOT. We've got 2 state routes that run through the City of Burien, and having a 6-year transportation plan enables that level of coordination as well. A little bit more locally, it actually allows our local utility districts to be able to coordinate their own capital improvement projects with our own. In many cases, for example, if we're going to overlay a street, the water districts are going to need to know that so that if they have upcoming capital projects, they can do that work prior to our overlay so that they don't have to try and do it after we've done an overlay and then end up having to repave a freshly overlaid street. The annual update is in fact required by law. RCW 35.77.10 does require that the transportation plan be renewed annually. Just this morning, I attended a Transportation Improvement Board funding workshop. Every single grant program that was discussed this morning actually emphasized the project must be on an agency's tip for it to be eligible to apply for grant funding. This is also true for federal funding as well through PSRC. Our 6-year tip is very tightly allied with our transportation master plan, which was completed last year. Essentially, the TMP creates the city vision and land use planning that's relied on by the 6-year transportation plan. Burien's adopted master plan is also tied to the Puget Sound Regional Council Transportation 2040. So we're basically talking about a 30-year horizon. And so we're trying to essentially prioritize projects and look at what's on our wish list for the upcoming 6 years. And then, of course, that informs us when we go through our annual budget exercise to try and determine which projects we'll actually try and fund. Staff developed a project list based on the needs and priorities of the various Transportation Master Plan network layers. That list is what's presented to the council and to the public tonight for input at tonight's hearing. So just you can see schematically that we rely heavily on the city's vision is laid out in the TMP, not only for auto and truck, but also for transit, pedestrian, bicycle use, so that we come up with an integrated system. There are a few things that I wanted to highlight as far as changes from the previous year's tip. Although, once again, staff has striven to be consistent with the Transportation Master Plan as we had last year. Essentially, some of the changes are fairly minor, and I'll go ahead and highlight those for you just so that you can be fully aware of what those were. We've done some formatting changes. Essentially, we've differentiated ongoing citywide programs with letter designations, and if you look at toward the end of your packet, you'll see those listed. Location-specific projects are differentiated with unique numbers. It's just a tool to make it a little bit easier for folks to be able to differentiate these. Staff felt that it would also be useful to identify potential funding sources with the hope that this would be a useful tool when it comes to budgeting individual projects. And then staff reviewed council's feedback from last year's hearing. And where corridors had high priority for pedestrian improvements, but essentially a lower priority for roadway improvements, we ended up splitting those projects to facilitate grant funding for the pedestrian improvements. 4th Avenue Southwest would be a good example of that. That would be from South 156th down to South 160th. Essentially, we split that, if you look on page 576, that one project was split into two, numbers 20 and 20.1. And we believe that 20, which is the sidewalk project, the pedestrian project, would actually qualify quite nicely for the Safe Routes to School funding. And so that would be one of the reasons why we wanted to split these. Another good example, 8th Avenue South on pages 574 and 75 of your packet. Again, this was two projects due to the length of 8th Avenue South. And so it was split into 4 projects essentially, 2 sidewalk projects and 2 roadway projects. And of these, project 13, we also believe would be a good candidate for the Safe Routes to School. We've taken the 2 NERA ramp projects because in fact those have been split already into 2 projects. We're already well into the preliminary design now for the eastbound off-ramp to Des Moines Memorial Drive. And so that would be another example where we've just gone ahead and recognized what we've already done. The one project that's been deleted would be 1st Avenue South Phase 2. We'll be completing that project this month. Reaching substantial completion and should be physically complete shortly after that. And we're looking forward to closing that project this year. Under Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, agencies are required to identify and evaluate accessibility barriers and develop programs to remove them. Nationwide, accessibility is coming under increasing scrutiny by private parties and by grant funding agencies. Staff will actually be publishing later this year an ADA transition plan. This will allow the city to address accessibility barriers in a proactive rather than reactive way. With this program in the tip, we also hope to be able to leverage some grant funding for this, assuming that we prioritize this when we come to the budget process. With respect to project timing, we found that the TIP has so many high priority projects that staff actually tried to sequence them to help us out as we go through the budgeting exercise and also dealing with issues of workload balance. So again, these are just, again, this is the draft, these are suggested with respect to how we're looking to schedule these over the next coming years. So that leaves us then with the remaining schedule for this process. Tonight we'll be, obviously we're holding our public hearing to receive community comments. Staff will be looking then for direction from council on any changes or additions to the draft. And then of course, the next council meeting on June 17 will be the actual consideration of the motion to adopt the 2014 to 2019 Transportation Improvement Plan. I am now available to respond to any questions that you may have at this time. That ends my presentation.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. Roberts. Welcome back to Burien.
Thank you.
We're happy to have you. Councilmember Robinson, I see, did you want to have a question or comment now before the public hearing? Or wait?
Please do the public hearing first.
Okay. So let's go ahead and have the public hearing then, and then we'll take questions or comments. So the public hearing is now open at 8:48 p.m. The following are the rules of order for conducting tonight's public hearing. All comments by citizens for and against the proposal shall come forward as I call your name. Any persons making comments shall first state their name and address for the record. Individuals will have 3 minutes to comment. Those representing a group or organization shall have 5 minutes. These rules are intended to give every person an opportunity to be heard.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, one thing I wanted to clear up on the matrix on item 35.1, where it says westbound off ramp, should that be westbound on ramp?
Good catch. Okay. With that, we'll move on to the public hearing. First up is Good Space Guy.
Thank you. When I looked at the report, I was amazed at how expensive our roads are. I thought, why are they so expensive? Is there some way of reducing the cost and still getting quality roads? And I didn't have the answer for that, but I'm sure there are people in our society who do have answers for how to get less costly roads that do the job. On sidewalks, I watched one business go out of business because a sidewalk was put in. So sidewalks sometimes have disadvantages. So I think the federal government helped fund the sidewalk that put the business out of business. So they put the sidewalk in where the customers used to park. So with the sidewalk in, the business lost its parking area, its convenient parking area for its customers. And so the structure was there. The business went out of business and was replaced by another business that went out of business, which was replaced by another business that went out of business. So it's just been a series of businesses going out of business because the sidewalk was put in. And the sidewalk is not that heavily used. Previously to the sidewalk, people walked on the side of the road. So the side of the road was little used for pedestrian traffic, and was also used for customer parking. So the side of the road served dual function. And other areas, I've noticed that it becomes more difficult to park as you're driving along. As you're driving along, you used to pull over and park on the side of the road. And now the sidewalk blocks your parking over the side of the road, and the sidewalks are not that heavily used. So sometimes it makes it more frustrating for the drivers. And from previous testimony, you probably know that I'm concerned about easy parking. So in downtown Burien, where some people get parking tickets, I want to increase free parking. I want Burien to compete with Tukwila and the South Center Indoor Mall, where people tend not to get parking tickets. So I've seen communities where in the downtown area where they provide parking facilities. So as part of transportation, one should always increase parking. So I got the red light.
Ed Dacey.
Ed Dacey, 2016 Southwest 146th, Burien. I guess we can say I'm going to have a different spin on what's going on here. But this month I brought home the transportation in Burien to me. Beginning the month with the surgery, my eyesight was severely limited, so I was a pedestrian. So I was walking or using transit in Burien to get around. There are things that we are good in being able to move around, but we can be better. Now, I've been a long-time proponent of, I think a goal should be that we put sidewalks on one side of the street on the safe walking paths for the elementary school in Burien. That those routes are published by the Highland School District. In doing some walking, some of these paths would be easily increased. Walking on the regular line on the road, asphalt, can be a little interesting at times. If you walk around a school about the time parents have dropped off their kids, the vehicles will be very quickly going by you. If we have the goal of getting the sidewalks on at least one side of the street on the safe walking paths for the elementary school kids, I think it's a good long-term goal. This is unfunded, obviously, but some of it can be pieces. For example, one area where you have sight restrictions on vehicles, and it's a short piece, we'll pick on Southwest 146th between 14th and Ambon. A sidewalk there to replace the walking path. One, separates pedestrians from the SUVs that usually get the tickets when you have the speed going on around the traffic school zones. Also, it connects the school into the route very quickly on the 146 all the way, I think it goes all the way to 8th Avenue south. It also connects it to Ambon. That's a short piece. And I think most of the schools areas have short pieces like this that could connect into our bigger sidewalk program. It's nothing that can be done in 1 year. It's a lot of staff work to be needed to find these little pieces, to list them so we maybe can get grants. But I think it's something that should be done in the transportation plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Chuck Rangel still here?
He left.
He left, yep. Thank you. So that brings us to the end of our list. So is there anyone else who would like to speak on tonight? There being no further testimony, the public hearing is closed at 8:55 p.m. So any further questions or comments from council on this issue? Deputy Mayor Prokodia.
Thank you. This is for staff. Item 14, South 152nd Street, 1st Avenue South to Du Bois Memorial Drive. There's a recommendation to consider elimination of an intersection. I was wondering if you could expand on that.
Currently, we've got 3 intersections in very close proximity there, where both 152nd and 8th Avenue South intersect with each other. And then almost immediately, those 2 legs, if you're proceeding south or east, will intersect with Des Moines Memorial Drive. Fairly awkward and has a fairly checkered past as far as safety goes. And so, as part of the NERA redevelopment, this would be tied in with it with a couple of dual purposes. One, to see if we can't consolidate these intersections in a way that allows for increased safety in that particular zone. And 2, if we're able to shift this, say, to the south a little bit, we may actually end up with some additional developable acreage for the NERA project, which is right, this is right at the southern tip of. So those are both motivations for trying to consolidate.
Councilmember Clark.
I want to thank you for that. I had some other comments, but that was very important because I have seen several really near misses there. It's been a concern, I know, of Councilmember Robinson also for some time, so that's very good. Thank you. I also want to thank you for Des Moines Memorial Drive on the hundreds, from 165th to Normandy Road. The work that you have done there has helped us get some extra trees, memorial elm trees in that area, and we really appreciate that very much. I personally really appreciate 136 South. I've been advocating for that to be done for a long time, as well as 8th Avenue South. And then, just so you guys know, with Highline Communities Coalition, that's the group that had the health grant, we are working with the county. We're still in the planning stages, but working with the county and PSRC to map those intersections where the jurisdictions come together, as well as our parks and our schools, so that we can see how close they are together for future planning. And it sounds like the county and PSRC is going to provide some funding. PSRC indicated this was the first time that a project like this had come forward, first with multiple jurisdictions, and secondly, where schools are included. They were not aware of any large-scale planning study that included schools. So that will factor into some of this, I think, but we have to have all the fun getting that work done first.
Councilmember Robinson.
Okay, I've got several things, including a couple of just thought of while the discussion was going on. First one is item 14 on the 3 intersections. Can we separate that into a separate project by itself? As Councilmember Clark said, that's a bad intersection. My office looks right down on that 4-way stop. It's gotten better. One of the first things I did after I joined the council was I started agitating for improvements at that intersection. So that some of the trees that blocked the stop sign came out, warning signs went in, bumps went in. People still run that stop sign. I still hear, I moved my desk so I don't see the accidents anymore, but I still hear them. And I don't know how many get reported, but there are a lot. And that's just a really bad intersection. I don't know if it's as bad at the angle intersection block south from there, because I can't see that one. But you've got traffic on coming northbound on Des Moines Way, go straight through with no stop sign or anything. At the same time, the traffic going, at the same time, the other traffic is taking the right angle onto Des Moines. And traffic southbound on Des Moines is trying to turn on 8th. And it scares me every time I come up to that intersection and there's somebody waiting at that stop sign. I put my turn signal on so they know I'm not turning. I just think that that would be an appropriate one to separate out and make a separate item and give it a high priority. And then kind of related to that, it's my understanding that Des Moines Memorial Drive from 128th to 509 is actually owned by the city of SeaTac. Is that right? So, but virtually all the development along there is in Burien, and the overwhelming bulk of the traffic on that street is Burien residents. So I'm wondering is that something that would go on this agenda, or is that something different?
Probably a separate agenda for that.
Okay.
Staff can report back on that.
Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up was item 38 and item A right underneath that. Now, item 38, we put a high priority on last year, request of the school district for the walkway. The item A I brought up last year, that's to create corridors that would be friendlier for bicycles and pedestrians because they wouldn't be following the arterials. We have at least 2 fairly long corridors in the city where you have short sections of paved streets that are separated along the same right-of-way by right-of-ways that have not been opened. They're city-owned, but they're not, and most of them have informal trails going through them, but they're not very user-friendly for the most part. And I'd like the city to take a specific look at developing those corridors into bicycle, pedestrian, and friendly corridors. And I'm thinking the 2 that I know offhand are 8th Avenue Southwest from 116th down to 136th, and southwest 132nd, which offers the potential for connection all the way from Ambom to Des Moines Memorial Drive. And I know that there are several other shorter ones around the city too that would require very little in the way of capital upgrades, and many of them could fit in with the safe schools, safe walking paths priorities. So I'd like to, we've got a high priority for the one, medium priority for A. I'd like to move that into more of a, not necessarily move it up on the priority list this year, but make it a priority to study those corridors and identify where we might be able to do that. And then there is one more on, number 15. And on the section that goes from 1st Avenue to 8th Avenue South, I supported the higher priority on that last year, and I think it's still an important pedestrian route. It's not real pedestrian friendly because you've got steep hills on both sides, but it got a lot of traffic. It used to get a lot of foot traffic from the Navos clients but Navas was over there on 146th, and now that it's moved, I'm wondering if that could go to a lower priority east of First Avenue, since you don't have that particular group using it anymore.
Okay. Councilmember Block.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, the format, one thing I think would be helpful is listing to have the high priority items first and then down from there. Having them intermingled kind of makes it harder to get an idea of what's going on with this. Also, I'm glad that, thank you for separating the 8th Avenue South projects. 13th, number 13, 8th Avenue South, in front of Cedarhurst School. That's a busy street. People regularly go over the 20-mile-an-hour school zone speed there, and there's no safe place for kids to walk. It's all sidewalk, gutters. So, ditches, excuse me. So anyway, you know, if we're going to put any project at the top of our list, that's the one I would put as number one, and that's probably the as far as where we can make an impact and be able to affect the safety of our children. That's probably number one. I'm going to make another pitch for 12th Avenue Southwest and Southwest 148th to be added for sidewalks. Currently, there are no sidewalks along there, and that's another route to school. I've seen kids jump into ditches there to avoid cars. Not a safe situation. So I'm going to make that pitch. And on the NERA project, I've talked about this before last year. I'm going to do it again. Right now, those projects, the off-ramp is listed as $15 million, and the on-ramp is listed as $60 million. A big part of those costs are because the portion of the freeway that those on-ramps, that on-ramp and off-ramp are connected to are rated at 60 miles an hour, whereas a few hundred yards down the road to the west, the freeway ends and the speed limit is reduced. What I would like to suggest is that we contact the Department of Transportation and ask them if at the end of the freeway, if the end of the freeway is adjusted to the east, I'd suggest 21st Avenue South as a boundary, since that's a nice bridge there, it gives a good geographic boundary, that the end of the freeway be made at 21st Avenue South, and that the speed be reduced to something appropriate, 45 or 35. In that, in doing that, because the cars will not have to decelerate or accelerate up to freeway speeds for that short period of time, we may be able to reduce the cost of those that new on-ramp and off-ramp. So I'm going to make that request again, that DOT be contacted and asked if that would be possible, and if so, would that reduce the cost of the on and off-ramp. It's a very important component of our area development and the projected auto mall. So sorry to get wonky on you, but you're engineers, you're used to it. Thank you.
Councilmember Clark.
I would just like to support Councilmember Robeson's request about the using streets like 132nd for bike routes, for pedestrian walkways, and any others we might find. I know you can't say yes or no right now, but you have to look at other areas like that. But there's got to be more than just one or two in our city.
Okay, that brings us to the end of our comments. Do you need any further direction from us on this tonight?
We can, we'd like to bring it back for adoption at the next meeting. What we would propose doing is bring back a matrix responding to some of the comments you've made tonight and changes that we think are appropriate.
Great. Okay, well, thank you very much. And with that, I also want to check in with Mr. Knudsen. It's 10 after 9 now. We still have a number of items left and with council, are there any of these items that are timely and need to be addressed tonight, or are there items here that we can push?
Item F does need to be addressed because under state law, we have to have it adopted by July 1st, the building code ordinance. Before that, the transportation investment package. It's kind of timely because just the state legislative process, if we're going to have input, we should do it now.
Okay.
Item G, the subdivision, I don't think that's particularly timely. It is? I'm sorry, it is. So, and that should be fairly short, I would think.
Okay, with that.
So the next three items are all timely.
Okay, let's move on then to the next item.
I move to support the motion. I'm trying to speed things along here, Brian.
Appreciate it. So let me catch up to you. So do we have a staff presentation on this item?
We do. I can make it very brief.
Very brief would be wonderful.
All right. This is regarding Resolution 344, supporting the 2013 Transportation Investment Package. This has been presented to the city by the Keep Washington Rolling Coalition. It's a statewide coalition of labor, business, and environmental interests and organizations. This is a real quick summary of some of the other suburban cities in the area that are have also already supported this with a resolution to the state legislature. Just to be real brief, the Connecting Washington Task Force last year identified $50 billion in unfunded transportation needs statewide. Just a little factoid, the American Society of Civil Engineers rates Washington State's infrastructure as a D+. Locally, just citywide, I simply added up the total amount of transportation needs that we've identified just in our 6-year tip, $300 million. That doesn't include the nearer ramps. The city's got a pavement rating in the city as of 2007 was a 77. A 60 basically is the point where it's no longer cost effective to do an overlay. You basically have to rebuild the road. So we're beginning to approach that. And in the past 5 years, since this study was done, we've only overlaid about 12 lane miles of road out of 305. So we're actually slipping back over time, and I'm sure that our overall pavement condition rating has declined. Essentially, at $200,000 per lane mile, and assuming a 15-year turnaround on the design life of pavement, meaning that you would have to overlay about 20 miles a year just to maintain what we've got. We're talking $4 million a year. So locally, we've got a pretty substantial need. Just to give you some highlights of the bill itself, it'd be $9.5 billion over 12 years. The direct gas tax distribution that's down in the third bullet would be especially helpful to Burien because this would actually provide direct money to the city that the city could use for its own projects or use as leverage as a local match for other grant funding. It's a condition that we don't enjoy today and would be a result of this legislation that we passed. I think all the rest of these are fairly self-explanatory. There was public comment earlier about some of the metro cuts that Metro is going to have to be initiating, and provisions would be included in this legislation for direct funding to Metro, as well as options for local funding districts as well. So this is a three-part resolution, plain and simple, providing strong support for the comprehensive package that's being worked on in Olympia, encouraging lawmakers to approve and enact the package, Oops, that looks like I lost my last one. Oh, and 3. This resolution would need to be passed immediately in order for us to get it to Olympia in a timely manner.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilman Miller.
Can I correct a typographical on the 4th whereas? Identify a 50 billing it in, I think you meant billion rather than
Yes,
billing.
yes, thank you, good catch.
Deputy Mayor Burien.
I support this resolution, but I do have concerns about the SR 509 improvements, and I hope that we as the City of Burien work closely with the state on if there's any negative impacts to our community that we have, work on some mitigation for that. Thank you.
Councilman Miller.
In answer to Councilmember Krakowiak's question, this is a joint effort by the South County Area Transportation Board, Skateboard, and they're working very closely with all of the South King County cities to put this into a package. And Mayor Lewis from Auburn has been the primary sponsor of this. So it's a freight corridor, it's a car corridor, there's a lot going on, but it's to fold it into a regional perspective rather than just the immediate impact of the city of Burien or the city of Des Moines. So that skateboard, it seems to be gaining momentum. I think this has been talked about for at least 5 years.
Yes, and I understand that you're saying that we will probably be able to impact the community, so I'll work on making sure that's moving. Thank you.
Councilman Block.
To follow up on Councilmember McDonald, this is, I spent quality talk more than 5 years. And this is part of our freight system, an important part of our infrastructure. And we need this new facility in order to remain competitive as a transportation hub. So it's important not only for Burien and all the residents here that work in the transportation industry, but for the entire region. So anyway, I am in support of this resolution.
Councilman Robinson.
How many other cities have passed similar resolutions?
What was the deal with? Yeah, I don't know if we know them all, but we can list.
Just one of the first.
There we go.
There's the one that we know about, Auburn, Covington, and Brockton, Warren, Kent, Kirkland, Ramsey, Seaback, and Shoreline.
I do know that as of late this afternoon, they added Snohomish County to this list as well. So as these councils and boards are meeting, it seems like pretty much everyone is on board with supporting this resolution.
Yeah, I thought it was more than that, actually.
Oh, yeah, I'm just trying to.
Been getting lots of emails about this. This isn't about the impact of the specific projects that gets addressed when the project comes up. This is about having money to actually have an effective road system.
Councilman Clark.
I support this because transportation infrastructure, especially for freight mobility, is very important to economic development. We can stay like we are and be a little backwater, or we can move forward with transportation infrastructure projects in a meaningful manner and maybe see our city thrive more.
For the record, I don't mind being backwater, but with that, can we go ahead and get a motion to approve?
I move to authorize the mayor to sign resolution 344 and forward to the Keep Washington Rolling Coalition to present to the Washington State Legislature.
Second.
Please register your votes. Motion is approved unanimously. The next item, which is discussion on proposed ordinance 583, amending EMC Title 15 buildings and construction.
On this item, our building official, Jan Bogie, is going to make a presentation as to the need for amending our building codes to be consistent with the state version of the building code and also make certain local amendments that are authorized. She has received a few questions from council about this, which she will address. Thanks.
We can make it as quick as possible. That'd be wonderful.
Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the council. I'm Jan Vogie, building official for the city of Burien. Before you tonight for council discussion is proposed ordinance 583, which updates the Burien Municipal Code to adopt the 2012 editions of the state building, plumbing, mechanical, fuel, gas, fire, and energy codes, updates construction administrative provisions to be consistent with changes in the 2012 codes, and updates city amendments for these code provisions to be consistent with changes in the 2012 codes. The state building code is updated every 3 years to adopt the most current construction codes, and it is required to be enforced in all jurisdictions within Washington state on July 1st. Consequently, it's important to update cities' adopted code to remain current with the state building code. The updates proposed in this ordinance are primarily administrative changes to reflect the changes in section numbers or the deletions of previously approved amendments that are no longer necessary because the new code now includes these provisions. Other changes to city amendments are the addition of a few definitions to clarify some terminology, revision of the exemption from permit for playground equipment to include an exemption only for residential play structures because the new codes require review for accessibility related to multifamily and commercial play structures and play areas, and a new exemption for single-family low-voltage permits to clarify that low-voltage wiring for garage door openers, doorbells, and thermostats can be done without a permit. If the proposed ordinance is found to be acceptable to council, staff recommends placing it on the June 21st consent agenda for approval. I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you for that. I did receive some questions from a council member late this afternoon, and I can go over those if you'd like. So one of the questions is, why do we have an exception for oil derricks? And the answer is that this is an item that is and has always been included as exempt from permit in Chapter 1 of the building code. It's included here only for consistency. We don't anticipate any, but that basically is just one of the standard provisions in the code. What is meant by an accessible route related to the exemption for sidewalks and decks? And that accessible route is defined in the IBC as a continuous, unobstructed path that complies with the accessibility requirements for physically disabled persons. So if it's not required to be reviewed for accessibility, there's really nothing for us to look at. So that's why it's exempt unless it's required to be accessible. One of the questions is, why are we eliminating shaft protection? Is there another provision that covers this? The International Building Code was revised, and the section that we amended in 2010 is now addressed in section 710 and 713, so that's covered. It's just covered in different sections and has been revised to be clear. A question, did something else replace the portable fire extinguisher requirements? Yes, this is now included in the 2012 International Building Code, so it no longer needs to be included as a city amendment. And then, what do the various deletions mean? Is there something that replaces the deleted sections? And the answer to that is yes, city amendments were deleted wherever the new 2012 codes now include these sections. Is there any other questions that I can answer for you?
Okay, do we have, thank you very much for the presentation. Do we have consensus to put on the consent agenda? I see dead nods. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next item, a motion to adopt proposed resolution 345, entering findings of fact and conclusions of law regarding preliminary approval of the Westwood Ridge subdivision.
Chip Davis, our planning director, is going to make a presentation on this.
Thank you very much. I will make this quick. The applicant is proposing a 16-lot single-family residential subdivision on a 3.63 acre site, which is located between South 187th Street to the north and South 188th Street to the south, as outlined on the vicinity map that's on the screen. Subject parcel is bordered on the west by 4th Avenue South, which is a paved arterial street. And the applicant is proposing access for all lots via a new public street, South 187th Street, which will be a cul-de-sac connecting to 4th Avenue South at the west property line. This proposed access is consistent with the 2008 Burien road standards. The proposed residential development will provide storm drainage flow control and treatment consistent with the 2009 King County Surface Water Design Manual via a 14,208 square foot stormwater tract and a 40-foot wide public drainage easement which extends east to 8th Avenue South. Consistent with Burien's 30% tree retention requirements, the applicant is proposing to retain 43% of the significant trees currently located on the site. Those trees would be located primarily along the northern and southern property lines. They are also proposing a 1,905 square foot tract to be located near the entrance of the subdivision, which is proposed for landscaping. The application was received on January 17th and was deemed complete on February 6th. The 30-day comment period ran from February 13th to March 15th, and one comment letter was received regarding the proposed development. All concerns that were raised by staff, agencies, or by public comments have been addressed in the staff report or at the public hearing. On May 14th, an open record public hearing was conducted by the hearings examiner, at which testimony was taken from the applicant, and the hearing examiner received the planning staff report and recommendation. The hearing examiner issued a decision on May 23rd recommending the City Council approval of the application subject to the conditions in the staff report as outlined in the hearing examiner's findings, conclusions, and recommendation, which is included on pages 677 through 715 of tonight's council packet. By passing proposed resolution number 345, the City Council will grant preliminary approval of the subdivision plat and adopt findings of fact, conclusions, and conditions of approval as set forth by the hearing examiner. Following this approval, the applicant will have to satisfy all required conditions of approval prior to presenting the plat for final adoption by the City Council. I'd be happy to answer any questions the council has.
What was the public comment that we received?
Public comment stated that the person owned a rental property in the area and asked how sewer service for the proposed subdivision will be designed and if it will result in a sewer assessment on surrounding properties. And the answer for the person was that the applicant has proposed sewer service for the proposed subdivision from Midway Sewer District via a developer extension from 8th Avenue South across the church property, and there were no expected impacts for adjacent properties as a result of that.
Councilman Ross, do you want to comment?
I have a question. There's a reference in here to the individual property owners being responsible for the individual flow control and best management practices. What does that mean?
I'm not an engineer, but I can translate that. It's really pretty simple. It's working out something like a rain garden that would handle all on-site water coming from the house, coming from the driveway. The first goal is to infiltrate all that water on the site where it's generated.
So each individual lot, each individual house would have one of those, and then it would be up to the property owner to maintain it?
Yes, it would, and as for all private stormwater facilities, we would execute a covenant with that property owner that would cover the whole subdivision. And there would be annual inspections of the facilities to make sure that they were working properly, and it would be the homeowner's responsibility to maintain them. The maintenance would be relatively simple for a rain garden. In instance where we note that it's not working properly, the homeowner would be informed, and would be advised on how to correct the situation.
Okay, with that, can we get a motion?
I move to adopt resolution number 345, granting preliminary plat approval of the Westwood Ridge subdivision and adopting findings of fact, conclusions, and conditions as set forth by the hearing examiner.
Second.
Please register our votes. The motion is approved unanimously. That last business agenda item is city manager's report.
There are a number of very positive items that you'll see in the city manager's report for this meeting. The first three are Parks Department programs and involving or projects. We have that new artwork, sculpture in the atrium, the Voices of Burien creative writing group that our staff supported in the elementary school family survey. There's a summary of the results of the recycling event in Harmony Park in Burien a couple weeks ago. And let's see, our HR department has been very active in filling the city's recruitment and hiring needs. And also we received the Well City Award again, which is resulting in a discount on our health insurance premiums. And then the last item is the summary of Councilmember McGilton's testimony to the King County Board of Health regarding the proposed secure medicine return rule.
Okay, Councilmember Block.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I want to also call attention to our being awarded the Well City Award. This is recognition of a great deal of effort on the part of our staff, and as a result of that effort, the taxpayers are saving a significant amount of money on their medical premiums that we pay for staff. And I just want to acknowledge that and thank staff for their efforts. The other thing I want to request, last meeting we found out that there were 23 reams of paper to produce a council packet of 618 pages. This week's is 736 pages. So I think we broke the record we set last week. I'm curious how many reams of paper we used this week. So if you could have Mr. Martin find that out for me, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilman Riker.
Thank you. I'd like to know when the council might be able to receive a copy of the survey results that was on
The elementary school,
Yes.
we can find that out.
Okay, great. And the other question I had to do with the proposed secure medical return rule. I had a person talk to me about being unable to find a place open after business hours to return medical pain relievers that were prescribed that are not necessarily taken by the pharmacies. The only place you can take it is at the police station. The police station isn't always open when they get here. So I was wondering if there is a possibility for these increased public numbers of these areas to be available for those kinds of drop-offs.
Councilmember Edgar, I can answer that. Controlled substances are controlled by the Fed. There's nothing pharmacies can do to accept it at this point. We need federal rulemaking to make it happen. It's part of everybody working on it and a lot of pressure to make it happen. What we're doing here is trying to put together a King County public health ordinance that will allow more places to take it, but it's a very difficult thing, and what's getting in the way is the federal rule.
Thank you. The person didn't want to throw it away down public drains.
That's the worst thing.
The worst thing, they realize that they just want to have a place to.
And keeping it in the house is the second worst thing to do. And I've said this before, that one tablet of Percocet, the street value is $30 for one pill. So it's a great incentive to get rid of it as soon as you can. So the police department is the only authorized location to dispose presently.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to council business. Really quickly, I want to mention that the Wild Strawberry Festival is the 15th and 16th before our next council meeting. Everyone can attend that. I went to Burien Bites yesterday. Wonderful event put on by Home Task. Very well staged event, and a lot of people were there last night. Councilmember McGill.
I was very disappointed that I wasn't at the last council meeting for the entire meeting when the CARES subject came forward. I'd like to bring that forward at another meeting. I think if we continue to underfund CARES, we have the distinct possibility of it either not being the program we want or it's going to go away. So at another time, I'd like to put it on the agenda for further consideration.
Okay, with that, seeing no further comments.
Mayor, may I make a comment?
Sure.
I was looking at the agenda, and I would assume that talking about CARES is going to be a little bit lengthy. So if we want to put that on, I would suggest not 17th because it's already full.
Well,
So maybe July 1st.
well, I would say, yeah, let's discuss it when we discuss agenda schedule at the next meeting, and so then we can potentially put it on first. Okay, with that, can we get a motion to adjourn?
Move adjournment?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.